Etorofu Island, Kuril chain, 6:42 a.m. clear skies, perfect visibility. Russian forces were conducting what Moscow called a snap military exercise. 200 troops, armored vehicles, mobile artillery, all clearly visible on Japanese claimed territory. The message was unmistakable. These islands belong to Russia. Then, 30 kilometers away, the horizon filled with aircraft, 40 helicopters, 12 MV-22 Ospreys, 2,000 U.S. Marines and Japanese self-defense force troops, all heading toward Russian positions. What happened in the next 28 minutes became the most aggressive amphibious counter-display in the Pacific since World War II, because Russia wanted to demonstrate control. America and Japan demonstrated how quickly that control could be taken away. This is that story. The Kuril Islands, a 1,300-kilometer volcanic chain stretching from northern Japan to Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. 45 islands, most uninhabited, all strategically vital. They control access between the Sea of Okhotsk and the Pacific Ocean. Russian submarines pass through here to reach open water. Japanese fishing fleets operate in surrounding waters. And 4 islands at the southern end, the ones Russia calls the Southern Kurils and Japan calls the Northern Territories, have been disputed since 1945. Soviet forces seized them in the final days of World War II. Japan never recognized the annexation. Russia militarized them, deployed troops, built bases, installed missile systems. For 79 years, this territorial dispute remained frozen. Diplomatic protests, occasional tensions, but no direct confrontation. Until 3 weeks ago, Russia announced increased military presence on the islands, new radar installations, upgraded air defense systems, permanent troop rotations. Moscow's message to Tokyo: these islands are Russian territory. Accept it. Japan's response: diplomatic protest. Zhao owning Russian ambassador, increasing defense budget, strengthening alliance with America. But no military action, because direct confrontation with Russia over uninhabited islands wasn't worth the risk. Then, at 4:30 a.m. on October 12th, Russian Ministry of Defense issued a statement. Snap combat readiness exercise on Kuril Islands, testing rapid deployment capabilities, large-scale troop movements, live-fire artillery drills, air defense exercises. This wasn't routine. SNAP exercises are deliberate, designed to demonstrate military capability, show speed of mobilization, send political messages. Russia conducts them near NATO borders, near Ukraine, near Japan. The message is always the same: we can move forces quickly, we control this territory, don't test us. At 5:30 a.m., Russian Il-76 transport aircraft began landing on Etorofu Island, the largest and most developed island in the chain. Troops offloading, armored vehicles rolling down ramps, artillery pieces being towed into position, all visible to Japanese reconnaissance satellites overhead, all documented in crystal-clear morning light. By 6 a.m., Russian forces had established defensive positions across the island. 200 troops, 6 BTR-82A armored personnel carriers, 4 Tu-S-19 self-propelled howitzers, 2 Panzer S-1 air defense systems, Russian helicopters conducting overflights. At 6:15 a.m., Japanese government convened emergency security meeting. Prime Minister, Defense Minister, Foreign Minister, Chief of Staff. The question? How to respond. Diplomatic protest alone would look weak. Russia was openly militarizing disputed territory, but military confrontation risked escalation neither side wanted. The discussion lasted 12 minutes. Then Defense Minister made a call, not to Japanese Self-Defense Force headquarters, to U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. The conversation was brief. Russia is conducting large-scale military exercise on disputed Kuril Islands. We're invoking mutual defense consultation protocols. Can U.S. forces participate in immediate response exercise? Response came in 90 seconds. Affirmative. Forces are already preparing. Because U.S. military planners had been watching Russian movements since 4:30 a.m., satellites tracked every aircraft, every vehicle, every troop movement, and contingency plans already existed for exactly this scenario. Not to reclaim the islands, not to start a war, but to demonstrate that territorial control is temporary, military capability is permanent. At 6:22 a.m., USS Makin Island, an amphibious assault ship, received flash orders. The ship had been conducting routine operations 180 kilometers south of the Kurils. Aboard, 1,200 Marines from 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, 20 MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, 12 CH-53E Super Stallion heavy-lift helicopters, 8 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters, everything needed for amphibious assault. Simultaneously, Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force contacted JS Izumo, a helicopter destroyer operating 200 kilometers southeast of the islands. Aboard, 800 Japanese troops, 12 SH-60K maritime helicopters, 4 AH-64 Apache attack helicopters. At 6:28 a.m., both forces received identical orders: conduct joint amphibious assault exercise, location 30 kilometers south of Etorofu Island, international waters, full combat simulation, launch all aircraft, deploy all amphibious vehicles, maximum visible presence, make it look real. Within minutes, controlled chaos erupted on both ships. Marines grabbing combat gear, pilots running to helicopters, crew chiefs loading ammunition, not for actual combat, for demonstration. But the movements were identical to real assault operations. At 6:35 a.m., first aircraft launched, 4 AH-1Z Vipers from USS Makin Island, flying low, fast, heading north. Their role, attack helicopter screen. In real assault, they'd suppress enemy air defenses. Today, they'd be visible on every Russian radar on Etorofu Island. At 6:38 a.m., Japanese AH-64 Apaches launched, 6 helicopters, formation flying, also heading north. Combined American and Japanese attack helicopter force now airborne, 10 aircraft, all armed, all heading toward Russian positions. At 6:40 a.m., Russian air defense radar on Etorofu detected the helicopters. Air defense crews went to alert status, Panzer S-1 systems rotating, tracking, calculating range, not locked, not threatening, just watching. Russian commander on the island, Colonel Mikhail Petrov, immediately contacted Northern Fleet headquarters. Multiple hostile helicopters approaching from south, American and Japanese. Request instructions. Response: monitor, do not engage unless they enter Russian airspace. Continue exercise. At 6:42 a.m., the main assault wave launched. 12 MV-22 Ospreys from USS Makin Island, each carrying 24 Marines, 288 troops airborne. Tilt-rotor engines rotating, vertical takeoff, then forward flight, formation flying toward the Kurils. 8 CH-53E Super Stallions followed. Heavy lift helicopters, each carrying vehicles, artillery, supplies. Everything needed to establish beachhead. From JS Izumo, 12 SH-60K helicopters launched carrying Japanese troops. Smaller birds, but numerous, coordinated. Within 6 minutes, 32 transport helicopters were airborne, plus 10 attack helicopters, 42 aircraft total, 2,000 troops, all heading north in broad daylight, all visible on radar, all clearly coordinated between American and Japanese forces. At 6:48 a.m., Russian radar operators on Etorofu watched their screens fill with contacts. One called out, "Colonel, we have 40-plus aircraft inbound, mixed American and Japanese. Formation suggests amphibious assault." Colonel Petrov stared at the radar display. This wasn't harassment. This wasn't posturing. This was an assault formation. Textbook. Attack helicopters leading, transport helicopters behind, heavy lift bringing up rear. If these forces continued on current heading, they'd reach Etorofu in 8 minutes. He ordered, "All units to combat stations. Air defense systems activate tracking. Prepare to engage on my command. Contact Northern Fleet. This is not routine." At Northern Fleet headquarters, 1,200 kilometers away, senior officers watched satellite feeds. American and Japanese forces conducting obvious amphibious assault exercise. Location: international waters. Legal, But the timing, the scale, the coordination, all deliberate. This was a message. At 6:52 a.m., the formation reached its destination, a patch of ocean 30 kilometers south of Etorofu Island, close enough to be clearly visible from Russian positions, close enough to reach the island in 5 minutes flight time, but in international waters, perfectly legal. The Ospreys descended, ramps dropped, Marines fast roped to inflatable boats below, combat rubber raiding crafts, small, fast, used for beach assault. Within minutes, 300 Marines were in boats, engines starting, forming assault waves. The CH-53S hovered. External cargo released, artillery pieces, vehicles, supplies, all lowered to boats below, building combat capability in real time. Japanese helicopters inserted their troops using same procedures, coordinated, rehearsed, professional. Russian forces on Etorofu watched through binoculars and telephoto lenses. Every movement visible in morning sun. This wasn't a distant exercise. This was a demonstration being conducted in plain sight. The message unmistakable. This is how fast we can put 2,000 troops in assault formation. This is how close we can get. This is what island seizure looks like. At 6:58 a.m., Colonel Petrov received orders from Northern Fleet. Do not engage. Continue observing. Diplomatic channels addressing situation. But observing meant watching something terrifying. Because Russian military doctrine relies on defensive fortification, build positions, establish air defense, wait for enemy to assault across difficult terrain. The Kurils were supposed to be perfect for this. Islands are natural fortresses, limited landing zones, concentrated defenses, except watching 42 helicopters and 2,000 troops deploy in 6 minutes demonstrated a problem. Against amphibious assault with air superiority, static defenses don't matter. The attackers choose landing site. They choose timing. They overwhelm defenses before response mobilizes. At 7:02 a.m., the mock assault continued. Marines established perimeter on water. Artillery pieces assembled. Attack helicopters conducted simulated suppression runs. Flying patterns that, in real assault, would destroy air defense systems before they could engage. Russian Panzer S-1 operators tracked the helicopters, simulated firing solutions, but they didn't lock weapons, didn't illuminate with targeting radar, because that would be provocative. And because US and Japanese forces remained in international waters, aggressive presence isn't an attack. At 7:08 a.m., 4 more aircraft appeared. F-35B, Lightning stealth fighters from JS Izumo, vertical takeoff jets. They flew high cover over the exercise, their presence adding another layer, air superiority. In real assault, these aircraft would destroy Russian air defenses before helicopters even launched. Russian air defense radar barely tracked them. Stealth characteristics made detection difficult. The operators saw intermittent contacts, ghosts on radar. They knew F-35s were there, but couldn't maintain solid lock. At 7:10 a.m., the exercise reached peak intensity. 42 helicopters orbiting, 2,000 troops in assault craft, artillery positioned, attack helicopters conducting mock runs, F-35s overhead, all 30 kilometers from Russian positions, all perfectly coordinated between 2 allied nations. And then, at 7:15 a.m., something else appeared. 4 LCAC hovercraft launched from USS Macon Island. Landing craft air cushion, massive vehicles, each capable of carrying 60 tons, tanks, artillery, troops. They roared across the water at 40 knots, creating enormous spray, visible and audible for kilometers. Russian forces on Etorofu heard them before seeing them, deep rumbling. Then 4 massive hovercraft appeared on horizon, heading north, not toward the island, toward the exercise area, but demonstrating capability. These craft could cross water, land on beach, drive inland. No port needed, no infrastructure, just raw amphibious power. At 7:18 a.m., Russian military intelligence transmitted urgent assessment to Moscow. US and Japanese forces conducting largest amphibious exercise near Kuril Islands in 30 years. Scale suggests capability to seize fortified island against opposition. Demonstration clearly timed to coincide with our exercise. Assessment: this is political message. The assessment was correct, but it understated the message. This wasn't just political, this was doctrinal. Russia had demonstrated it could deploy 200 troops to defend territory. America and Japan demonstrated they could deploy 2,000 troops to seize territory. 10-to-1 advantage, deployed in less time, with air superiority, with amphibious capability, with coordination that Russian forces, despite decades of Kuril militarization, couldn't match. At 7:22 a.m., Colonel Petrov received new orders. Continue exercise as planned, ignore foreign forces, complete artillery drills, demonstrate Russian control of territory. So Russian forces fired their artillery. 4.2 S-19 howitzers, practice rounds, explosive shells impacting designated range areas, demonstrating firepower. But the demonstration felt hollow. Because 30 kilometers away, American and Japanese forces were demonstrating something more important, not firepower, mobility, the ability to project force, to choose when and where to fight. At 7:28 a.m., the mock assault began its final phase. Marines and assault craft began simulated beach approach, not toward Etorofu, toward empty ocean, but the movements were identical to real assault. Assault waves forming, attack helicopters providing cover, artillery preparing fire support. Russian forces watched, filming, documenting, knowing this footage would be analyzed by military planners for years, studying American amphibious doctrine, Japanese integration, coordination between allied forces. At 7:35 a.m., the exercise concluded. Helicopters began recovering troops. Assault craft returned to ships. F-35s departed. The hovercraft turned south. Within 15 minutes, international waters south of Etorofu were empty again, as if nothing happened. But everything had happened, because military demonstrations aren't about what you do, they're about what you prove you can do. Russia proved it could deploy 200 troops to defend islands. America and Japan proved they could deploy 2,000 troops to seize any island in the Pacific. The difference between defensive posture and offensive capability. The difference between holding territory and taking territory. By 8 a.m., Russian exercise on Etorofu continued. Troops conducting drills, artillery firing, helicopters flying. Everything according to plan. But morale had shifted. Commanders were quieter. Troops asked questions, because they'd just watched a demonstration of how quickly their defensive positions could be overwhelmed. Within hours, Russian state media reported on the Kuril exercise, successful combat readiness drill, rapid deployment of forces, defense capabilities demonstrated, territorial sovereignty reinforced. No mention of American and Japanese response, no footage of 42 helicopters and 2,000 troops 30 kilometers away, just claims of success. But satellite imagery told different story. Commercial satellites captured everything. Russian forces on Etorofu, American and Japanese forces conducting amphibious exercise nearby. The images circulated through military analysis communities worldwide. Professional assessment was unanimous. This was strategic messaging at its finest. Japanese government issued statement. Japan and United States conducted routine amphibious readiness exercise in international waters. Exercise demonstrates strong alliance and commitment to regional security, no connection to other regional activities. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command statement was nearly identical. Routine exercise, international waters, alliance coordination, but the timing, the scale, the location, nothing was coincidental. This was calculated response. Russia conducts SNAP exercise on disputed islands. US and Japan conduct larger exercise demonstrating island seizure capability. Not threatening, not aggressive, just demonstrating that territorial control is conditional, military capability is permanent. Strategic implications rippled across the Pacific. First, Japan proved it could coordinate large-scale amphibious operations with US forces. The Izumo-class destroyers, controversial when built because they resembled aircraft carriers, demonstrated their value, carrying F-35s, deploying troops, operating as amphibious flagships. Japan's military was no longer purely defensive. Second, U.S. Marine Corps validated its Pacific strategy, distributed operations, amphibious flexibility, the ability to respond within hours to any crisis. The 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit had been conducting routine operations. Within 90 minutes of notification, they'd launched full-scale exercise. That response speed matters. Third, Russia learned its Kuril defenses were vulnerable, not to direct assault. Nobody believed America would actually invade the islands, but vulnerable to being neutralized, because amphibious forces with air superiority can bypass fortified positions, land where defenses aren't, overwhelm before reinforcements arrive. Most importantly, China was watching, because the same amphibious capabilities demonstrated near the Kurils apply elsewhere. Taiwan, South China Sea Islands, disputed territories throughout the Pacific. What US and Japanese forces demonstrated wasn't specific to the Kurils. It was universal doctrine, the ability to project power, to choose engagement points, to coordinate allied operations. Within a week, strategic assessments appeared in military journals worldwide. Kuril exercise demonstrates allied amphibious capability. US-Japan coordination reaches new level. Russia's island defenses face modern challenge. The assessments were analytical, not propagandistic. Professional military observers recognized what happened. Russia tried to demonstrate territorial control. US and Japan demonstrated territorial control is temporary without ability to defend against modern amphibious assault. 1 month later, Russian military conducted another SNAP exercise, not in the Kurils, near Sakhalin Island, farther from Japan, less provocative location, message received. Today, Russian forces remain on the Kuril Islands. Troops, bases, air defenses. The territorial dispute continues. Diplomatic negotiations go nowhere, but Russian military exercises near Japan have become less frequent, less aggressive. Because October 12th taught a lesson. Military demonstrations work both ways. You can show you control territory, but someone else can show they could take it. And when the demonstration involves 42 helicopters, 2,000 troops, stealth fighters, and hovercraft deploying in 28 minutes, 30 kilometers from your positions, in broad daylight, the message is unmistakable. This is the Kuril Islands. This is the Pacific. This is what happens when you demonstrate territorial control near American allies. You get a demonstration of what island seizure looks like, not as a threat, as a reminder. Military capability matters more than static defenses. Alliances matter more than isolated positions. Mobility matters more than fortification. 6:42 a.m. Etorofu Island. Russian forces conducting exercise. 7:10 a.m. 28 minutes later. 2,000 American and Japanese troops demonstrating amphibious assault 30 kilometers away. 0 shots fired, 0 threats made. 1 strategic message delivered. Russia controls the Kurils today, but they learned they control them because nobody has decided to take them, not because they couldn't be taken, and that knowledge changes everything.